All right, let's jump right into what could be the next major diplomatic crisis. And this one is a big deal. It pits a superpower against its oldest, closest allies. We're talking about a massive island, a historic military alliance, and a threat that could literally fracture the West. So, let's unpack this potential future where the United States and its allies are on the brink. All over Greenland. So let's just cut straight to it. The heart of this whole thing is a pretty shocking possibility. The White House is considering all its options, and that includes military force, to get Greenland from Denmark. Now, this isn't some quiet rumor whispered in diplomatic circles. No, this is a direct challenge, and it's rooted in things that have happened very, very recently. And you can bet the reaction was immediate and just as blunt. The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, basically drew the ultimate red line. To her, any move like this would spell the end of the long-standing transatlantic alliance. So you see, this isn't just some disagreement over a piece of land. No, this is seen as a fundamental threat to the very existence of NATO, of the entire Western alliance as we know it. The stakes? They couldn't be higher. Okay, so with a threat that big on the table, you have to ask, how would the rest of the alliance react? A move like this wouldn't just rattle Copenhagen, oh no. It would send massive shockwaves across the entire continent. It would force allies to choose sides in a fight they probably never, ever imagined was even possible. And the response would probably be a swift, unified wall of support for Denmark. You'd see France and Germany immediately working on a joint plan. You'd have Finland demanding that NATO itself step in to bring the US into line. The European Union, the United Kingdom, they'd all be signing statements making it crystal clear that Greenland's sovereignty is absolutely not up for debate. The message is simple. In a showdown like this, Denmark is not standing alone. Yeah, and this quote from the European Council president really hits the nail on the head. It gets to the core principle here. For Europe, this isn't about land or military bases. It's about something much more fundamental, the right of a people to decide their own future. It's a total rejection of the idea that some foreign power can just swoop in and decide a nation's fate. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question at the center of all this. Why? Why on earth would the United States be willing to risk its most important alliances for this huge, sparsely populated island of ice? Well, let's dive into the geopolitics, because that's where the answers are. Okay, so reason number one is a classic military strategy concept. It's called the GI-UK gap. It's this critical choke point between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK, and it's basically the gateway to the North Atlantic. For the US Navy, controlling this passage is, well, it's everything. It's how you bottle up an enemy's fleet, and it's how you defend the entire American East Coast. Greenland is the northern anchor of that whole defensive line. But believe me, it goes way beyond just naval strategy. The American thinking here is layered. First, Greenland sits on the absolute shortest missile path between Russia and North America. The US already has its critical Pacific space base there for missile warnings. Then, as the ice melts, it becomes all about controlling future shipping routes and getting access to what could be vast reserves of oil, gas, and those rare earth minerals that are essential for, well, for everything from your smartphone to advanced weapons. For Washington, this is about locking down dominance in the Arctic for the next 100 years. Now, here's what's really fascinating. While the threat itself sounds shocking and new, America's interest in Greenland is anything but. This is a story that actually goes back more than 150 years. I mean, just look at this timeline. The US government first talked about acquiring Greenland way back in 1867, the same year it bought Alaska. Then, after World War II, President Truman secretly offered $100 million for it. Fast forward to 2019, President Trump brought the whole idea back into the public eye. And the scenario we're exploring here is what happens if he revives it after a re-election, but this time with a much harder, more aggressive edge. This potential crisis isn't out of the blue. It's the next explosive chapter in a very, very long American obsession. Okay, so far we've been looking at this from the perspective of Washington and the big European capitals. But what about the people who are literally at the center of this geopolitical storm? Let's flip the script and look at this from the Greenlandic point of view. And this number right here is so important. For all this talk of high-level military strategy and global power plays, we are talking about the homeland of just 57,000 people. Think about that. That stark contrast between the human scale of the island and the superpower ambitions aimed right at it, that's really the heart of this story. And this quote from Aleqa Hammond, who was Greenland's first female prime minister, just perfectly captures the feeling of indignation. In Washington, the conversation is about a strategic asset, a piece of real estate to be bought or taken. But for the people who actually live there, it's a profound insult to their identity, their history, and their basic right to exist as a people. You see, what this really boils down to are two completely incompatible worldviews. On one side, you've got the US, seeing Greenland as a strategic real estate asset, a practical transaction for national security. And on the other side, you have Greenland and Denmark seeing it as a homeland, a nation of people whose rights are protected by international law. There's just no common ground. They're not even speaking the same language. And look, this isn't just a matter of feelings or opinions, it is literally written into law. Greenland is an autonomous territory. The Self-Government Act from 2009 explicitly states that the decision on independence has to be made by the Greenlandic people themselves through a referendum. Their path to self-determination is legally defined, which makes any kind of American threat a direct challenge to the rules the world is supposed to play by. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, this potential crisis is way more than just a squabble between allies. It could be a preview of a whole new era of conflict and competition in a rapidly changing Arctic. The fallout, if this were to happen, would go far, far beyond Greenland. It raises these huge fundamental questions. Can an alliance like NATO even survive when its most powerful member threatens another? As the ice melts and opens up new shipping routes and resources, is this kind of aggressive move going to become the new normal? And maybe the biggest question of all, will the very idea of national sovereignty, the principle that countries get to decide their own fate, actually hold up in this new era of great power competition? And that leaves us with one final and pretty sobering question. This whole confrontation over Greenland really forces us to ask, as the physical landscape of the Arctic is literally transformed by climate change, are we about to watch the legal and diplomatic landscape that has governed the world for decades just melt away right along with it?